Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of Beyond the Listing. And today we have a super exciting guest, Edwin Chan. And he's not just an exciting guest, he's also a co-host and one of the best co-hosts in Ontario. And his company is Home Seeker Vacation. So thank you for coming, man. Very excited to have this conversation because we can dive deep into things that we usually don't get a chance to with other guests on this podcast. So tell us a little bit more about your company, your experience in the industry, and what regions do you focus on?
So, been in the industry for 11 years, part-time, but really start building the portfolio in Muskoka and mostly luxury, waterfront, and unique properties for the past 2 years. Now we're around 20 different properties all around Ontario, mostly in the Muskoka waterfront area. Yeah, we're still growing and looking to pick up a few more along the way this year.
That's amazing, man. I love it. And we spoke about you expanding more in the GTA as well, because you focus on luxury properties, and that's really great. It's an amazing segment. So, but let's touch on Muskoka a bit. So with Muskoka, it's cottage rentals, obviously, right? Is there anything different around the way those work? Do you get more repeating guests because it's kind of seasonal and guests like going back to the same places versus major cities like Toronto and other municipalities?
Yeah.
Can you touch a bit more on that?
So most of the guests that are booking Muskoka cottages is going for more of the Canadian tradition. This is part of our Canadian tradition to go, to a cottage and spend some family time. So the avatar mostly is families or groups celebrating either, multi-generational families that are coming together, or friends and families celebrating like a wedding or a birthday or some type of special events. So we do have a lot of repeat guests because once they like the place, they like to come back again. And it's easier for us and it's easier for them. And that becomes a year-to-year thing, and that also cuts down the fees because we're booking directly with them. Compared to the city we see more tourists and just a different segment of customers that we deal with in the city. Less local people, more people coming into the city, where our cottages are mostly being booked by people that live in Toronto or surrounding areas, or people flying in that used to live here and they want to bring their families and
Right. And that's what we are seeing. We don't have many cottages, not like you. We used to have about 3-4. I think we downsized to 2 because we want to focus more on the GTA area. But we do see a very high level of people who are booking every year for 3 years in a row. They play golf in the area and they love this place, and people are creatures of habit in a way, and they just want to go to the same place. And you see that sometimes in Toronto we have a few repeat guests that I've noticed, but at the cottages it's way more constant, and they just, if they like the place, they come back. That's really cool. So in terms of these properties, they're high-end, they're premium. How do you stand out from other places over there? Because Muskoka has some beautiful high-end cottages that are for sure renting out.
Yeah, they're a bit of both. There's also grandma's cottage, and there's also new cottages that are newly built, and there's also renovated cottages. In terms of how we stand out is, I would say mostly is the upfront research to really understand their location of their property, their surrounding comparables in terms of like the ones that are doing well. So for example, I'm looking for a 6-figure earner. What are they doing in their property? What amenities are working for them? And an easy tip is to just look at their reviews, copy all of those reviews, paste it in GPT, and kind of find out, why are people coming? What amenities are they raving about? Take those nuggets and then deploy them in your property. And obviously we're going to talk about photography is really important because you want to then showcase them accordingly.
That's why it took me maybe 3 or 4 different companies to try out here in Toronto before we found our partners who are super awesome. Shout out to those guys. Epic photographers, right? I would love to bring them to Muskoka, but it's a bit of a drive.
Yeah.
Right. This side is more for your clients who own cottages. How do you present your information? How are you different from other people who run cottages? But, that's really cool. What about the guests? How do you stand out for the guests so they would book your cottage over somebody else's cottage that's also on Airbnb or Booking.com, Airbnb, or whatever it is?
Many answers to this question. So I think one is customer behavior and learning the customer journey. Really need to understand that is when people are booking, they're looking at there's going to be a ton of listings. So just like anything we search for, we're just looking at page 1. So we use technology to find out where we rank for each of our listings. So we want to make sure they're ranked on page 1. Next thing is the cover photo or the hero image needs to really showcase the season that they're booking for.
Right, that's actually an interesting thing, right? So you do change photos depending on the season. You do kind of get it ready. That's quite a bit of work, but of course necessary work to attract more attention. Okay, that's really cool. That's a really cool It's a cool tip for people who are doing cottages. Okay, that's really good. What about maybe amenities, right? Some cottages have hot tubs, saunas, and other fun activities over there, and some might not. Do you see better performance with the ones who have those?
100%. So we did a deep dive research for like looking at the top 200 properties in Muskoka and the surrounding areas. And what we noticed is most of them are waterfront. They have a shallow entry beach, and a beach that has no seaweed, no rocks, just pure sand, and then easy to go in. So like the kids can play, and parents don't have to worry about them, falling into the deep end and stuff like that. A second is, the hot tub is pretty critical, I would say.
Really?
On average, we're seeing $15,000 to $25,000 of revenue lift just by having a hot tub.
Wow, that would pay for itself.
It pay for itself, yep. But a lot of owners not everyone is down for it because the maintenance, there's cost, and there's cost of installing it.
I'm putting one in.
I would put one in if I were the owners, 100%. Barrel saunas and all the watercrafts. So like, just make sure like if you're hosting 10 people, for example, make sure that everyone has toys to play with. So like, say for example, around the fire pit, you want to have 10 chairs if you're sleeping 10, right? If you want to put kayaks, you at least have 2 kayaks, 2 canoes, and a stand-up paddle boards, water mats. These are all things that people want to play with. What else is there?
I love this. This is so data driven. I'm a numbers guy as well, and this is amazing. I love the research, and this is very insightful, and I love the fact that it's not just like, hey, waterfront property, which is gonna make sense, but it's like shallow entry to the beach, no
seaweeds.
Muskoka is not so bad with seaweeds. It's usually pretty good.
Some lakes do have it.
But potentially, right? But like I know the Kawartha is a very weed oriented. A lot of people don't like going there for that reason, but Muskoka is pretty good. But that's like very, very insightful. That's really good. So Watercrafts, make sure you guys buy. That's awesome. That's really good. I mean, if you have anything else, please share. But this is already
there's stuff in the inside too, like wintertime, because you're not much to do outside. So I mean, the fire pit's important, the barbecue is important, stuff like that. Inside the house, if it rains or if it snows, then you got the games room so the kids can play.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You got the bunk rooms so the kids can hang out. Like if you've got 2-3 families together, like you got the friends. I don't want to sleep with mom and dad. I'd rather sleep with my friends.
Fireplace is probably nice, right? I'm writing this stuff down. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm learning so much already. Well, that's really cool. Okay, and what about, and probably another thing that comes to mind would be reviews, right? When people would write up their experiences, how much they love. 5-star reviews, great, but if you actually have, not just like, oh, it was great, we had a lot of fun. Like they write up how epic it was, how they loved their getaway, and it made their family's summer vacation or whatever, right? Like people can be like, oh shit, I want to have that. So if you have those, I bet they also, drive things.
Every review would help the algorithm to keep you on page 1. That's always the goal. And also reputation of the property itself, so people can see what they're booking. I think one thing a lot of hosts don't do is ask for the review. And we do that. We asked it twice. We asked them when they leave to leave us a review, and then we asked them again the day after to leave us a Google review. Because
even the guests?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So we have hundreds of reviews on Google because of this strategy, and they also post photos of their experience. So for example, I'm looking at your property, I see your company name, I'm looking online. Hey, let's see what other properties you have.
That's a nice hack. Right? You see, I'm learning so much here. I'm writing these things down. I gotta tell my team to do that. We actually do obviously follow up for reviews. Of course, it's a very important process, but we don't ask people to go and write Google reviews. Mostly clients, right? Because we provide service to clients. But that's actually pretty good because it beefs up your Google reviews and, like you said, photos and stuff of their experiences. That's actually quite awesome. Well, another thing with cottages that is kind of a pain point that I found was that it's kind of easy to rent it during the hot season, during the high season in the summer, those 2 months, July and August, when kids are out of school. It's fully booked most of the time. Last summer was flaky. This summer rather was flaky, but because of, people don't have as much disposable income. But in general, it's pretty good. What about the off season? Because I've seen dreadful experience trying to book even a weekend out of season. What is your experience in that?
Most of our weekends are booked for most of our waterfront cottages. It always comes down to the amenities and how the listing's put together. Okay. So like, again, going back to like, it's seasonal, it's winter is coming up, or when it's a fall time, do you have like fall leaves photo? So you really have to understand why are they coming? And we want to make sure the listing reflects that. And then we want to be pacing accordingly. So if you look at the data, people that book cottages in the wintertime, the booking window is around a week, sometimes less, 2 weeks, 1 week. Sometimes we see them like 2-3 days before the booking time. In the summertime, they're looking at like 60-90 days.
Right. So you mentioned photos. That's a big one that you make sure it reflects the season.
And then pricing too.
Yes, of course, the pricing has to come down. but like there's just so much supply out there, so many cottages, and not nearly as many people interested. So you definitely need to stand out from all the other opportunities that people can book. And yeah, that's actually quite interesting that you're seeing a lot of results. We should talk more about that, but that's very good. So if you guys need to,
how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. If you need to rent your cottage, don't come to me, come to Edwin right here. He's going to do a good job. So yeah, because honestly, like, we're experts in Toronto, and we do have a few, like I said, but we're having, luckily for us, those cottages actually are in regions where they cannot rent in the winter. They're not allowed to by the short-term rental regulations in Muskoka region, which we can briefly touch on right now, that new ones came out, but that specific region, it's slipping my mind right now, Dickey Lake, they can't do, they can only do the summer, so it doesn't affect us. But there's another cottage that we work with. We could technically, the owners are not, particular about renting it all the time, so it's not an issue, but we can't, even if it's sitting out there, we can't rent it. So it's wild. So I'll get some tips from you, I guess, on that. Yeah, so regulations, let's dive into that a little bit. Yeah, I feel like it's putting a wrench in a lot of Muskoka properties right now.
Muskoka Lakes is trying to pass, well, they passed the bylaw already, but they just had a public meeting with all the hosts last week, and everybody is just upset. So a few of our owners actually got in touch with the councilors, and we're trying to figure out, how do we get up and running according to their bylaws, but their systems are not set up yet. And it's very frustrating. But to combat it, to really optimize with the rules in place, I would say, is really understanding when are the dates that are worth booking and when are the dates that are not worth booking.
Right.
And you want to put a strategy in place where I want to deter people from booking these dates, because I know this date is not really worth a lot of money. Obviously, weekends are worth more than the weekdays, so we want to prioritize blocking or not allowing check-in, check-out dates on certain dates. So we only allow Thursday, Friday check-ins, and we don't allow any other days of check-in. And then the bylaw right now is really complicated. So
I've read it. It's really long,
complicated,
and it is very complicated. But I did sit down and read the whole thing, and it's pretty wild. Like, they have very stringent restrictions and very hard regulations on what to have even in the units, right? And they can have inspectors come in. It's like, this is wild. Yeah, and you were going to probably speak around how many days you're allowed to do during this season of that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
It's all good. So Muskoka Lakes region, obviously there's Huntsville, there's Gravenhurst, there's different, Georgian Bay. Everyone's a little different, but Muskoka Lakes right now has, I would say, the most strict regulations in the Muskoka region. So say peak summertime, those 3 months, June, July, August, you're only allowed to rent out a week at a time with a 1 week break per month. On top of that, they're saying is like, sure, you can rent out 2 days for that week, but if you rent those 2 days out, that means the remaining 5 days you cannot rent it out.
Right. And I think it's a minimum of 3 days, actually. It's a minimum of 3 days.
3 nights?
Yeah, I think it's minimum of 3 nights. You can't rent it for less or something like that. And you have to, exactly, if you rent it just for 3 nights, that's it. Or maybe even it's 5 nights. Like, I can't remember it right now.
Originally it was 7 nights.
Yeah, it was 7 nights. So yeah, and it's like a scale, like between these and these dates, you have to only rent it for a week or something like that, and it's wild.
Yeah. And they're forcing us to take a break. So say in August you're booked out, there's 4 weeks in the month. If you book 3 weeks, you cannot book the 4th week per month. So every month you have to take a 7-day break.
Oh, really?
It's
that
insane.
I missed. That's annoying.
But if you look at the bylaw itself, it just says your maximum occupancy is 75% during peak season. So why are we being controlled in terms of which days we should be booking,
That's
which
wild.
days we cannot book? It's wild right
I
now.
guess I didn't dive that deep into it, but it's very annoying. Like, what is going on? And it's I'm pretty sure a lot of people are very upset. A lot of people still book for a whole week. Last year, I mean, again, last year, whatever, 2024, it was tough to get a week booking in certain places. So this is going to really put, if they are saying minimum a week, and people just don't have money for it because, economy is struggling. Like, what are you going to do? Okay, whatever, we're creative, we'll come up with some solutions, but other people are just doing it themselves. They're putting people who are, let's say, a little older, it's their, one of our clients, right? They're retired couple, beautiful people, wonderful people, and it's their retirement. And they were making good money, obviously, during COVID. In 2024, it wasn't amazing for them. We did the best job possible, maximize the revenue. They were very thankful given the fact that it wasn't the best year. But can you imagine, like, they doing it themselves, and now all these regulations and their pension almost, right? Like they get very little pension. It's their retirement money, and they're getting screwed. That's not great, right?
Yeah,
I'm all for regulations. I'm for
likewise
getting certain rules in place. Otherwise, it's mayhem, but it has to be reasonable, right? Like things in Toronto turned around a little bit because now compliance actually replies to you, and they're not complete robots. Which the pendulum swung a little bit towards the middle, but it's a better process. So I am for regulations, but has to make sense. And this doesn't make a lot of sense right now.
And it's very anti-host. All the fines and penalties are just for the host. But say you're the neighbor complaining just for jokes, or because you're being vindictive because you don't like short-term rentals.
Right.
And you're the guy that's complaining 50 times. There's no consequences for people like that.
Yeah.
So you're wasting city and township money
Yeah.
to deploy, bylaw officers to come get you, but they were just being spiteful. So we were saying, like, people that complain multiple times, if you have their name on the list, they should be fined too. So it's a fair game on both sides.
Yeah, well, that's never going to happen. We both know that. So, yeah. Let's switch gears a little bit into more positive things, right? Where bringing these things to your owners sometimes can be difficult, right? It's like, hey, new regulations, you have to manage that. So I guess my broader question is, how do you manage the relationship? Because in our industry, you and I were co-hosts. We're not doing arbitrage. And again, for people's sake, arbitrage is when you rent a property yourself with your own money, and then you're renting it short term, you rent it long term, and then you're making money on the difference. We actually have clients, right? We have guests who are client number one, and then we have property owners who are client number two. So it's a tough industry, lots of people to manage. So how do you manage those relationships with your clients who are the property owners? What are the main things that you are doing when it comes to difficult situations, like explaining the new short-term rental rules that are coming out, dealing with the slow season? We were just talking before the podcast how it's crazy snowstorms, and people can't even access those properties, and you need to mitigate these issues. You need to explain it to the guests, you need to explain it to the clients, loss of revenue. How do you manage those? What are a few stories or management processes that you go through?
I think it goes to something that you're very good at, is communication. So before we start with each of our clients, we call it the revenue report. So what we want to do is we're going to dive deep into the market, look at their property in specific. Just like a realtor, we run a comparable, just to understand which months and which days are going to earn this much money, which months are going to be slow, what are the occupancies like. So we set the expectations up front. So they know what's going on, so they don't come like, 1 month they're like, hey, what's going on? Why is it so little? It's supposed to be 50 grand a month. Now it's like 10 grand a month.
Right. That's a very good point, because one of the biggest questions I'm asked when I speak to a new potential lead, right? Like, how much money can I make?
Yeah.
I tell them, look, we're going to look at AirDNA. We have access to professional version. Thanks to you for suggesting that. Definitely worth it. So we can look at the numbers in the area. But I will never guarantee you how much you can make, because you never know until you do it. And whoever is going to guarantee you something, they're lying to you.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you straight up, maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot trying to undersell, but I don't want to deal with the situation where I promised you something and then we couldn't deliver. Because I can't control people's demand, right? Like, I can't control
the economy.
Yeah, exactly. So we can control excellent client services. So yeah, that's a very good point, that you don't make promises you cannot keep.
You can always I wouldn't say undervalue, but like you can under forecast, knowing that you can actually beat these numbers.
That's what I like to do.
Yeah, at the end of the day, our clients are happier, at least how we approach it. They're a lot happier knowing, hey, we made more than we actually thought we'll make, and it's increasing year over year, and that's what they want to see. So I think it's a combination of that. And so for us, every single month we're sending out an owner's report. So that also details, revenue, booking, costs, and all that stuff. And I think most of it's just really communication and letting them know, like, hey, in this business, first of all, this is not real estate, this is hospitality.
Yes.
That's pretty critical that you let them know. And
people sometimes forget that.
They do forget it. And it's not just you dump a renter in there and that's it. There's other stuff going on. Like, there's lots
of stuff going on.
Too many things going on, right? Other little micro things going on. And like stuff like this is wear and tear. It's going to happen, and something to, let them know in advance. Like, there's things that are valuable, maybe not have it in the property. And for certain high traffic furniture is to get something more high end or more commercial grade, because people are jumping on it, or they're sleeping on it, or they're sitting on it, or different weight people. So that does happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you have a brand that you need to uphold, and you kind of You've worked on it for many years, as you mentioned, and that kind of touches on another thing I wanted to ask you, where there's a lot of moving components, right? And there's it's not just you, it's not just me. We have teams that are running behind the scenes, our beautiful guys and girls over there, right? Can you speak a little bit more about how do you structure your team, a few high-level things around the management process behind the scenes? How do you keep the lights on? How do you get it all figured out? There's so many moving components.
Yeah. I mean, team building is part of leadership. I think I'm still learning about it, but what we tried it at the beginning, I mean, obviously don't really know what we're doing and try to hire and try to delegate. But I think the key thing that allows us to really grow and succeed without too much stress is we have 2 meetings every single week. Mm-hmm. One is in Monday called a level 10 meeting. And then what we do is go through first is I want to understand my team's needs and wants. So we always go through like, okay, what are the things that you are trying to achieve this week, something with gratitude type of thing. So like for example, like I want to take my family out for dinner. Hopefully we perform better this month, so we get a bonus, so we can take my family out for dinner, like stuff like that. And then also like our intention of the week, which means like in the business, what are we trying to resolve this week? So there's different things always going on and how we want to focus our attention on certain things. Like say the season's changing, then okay, everybody go fix these or update the listings to reflect the season. Right. And then, okay, next week, let's work on pricing. So there's different things that goes on in the week to week. And then on Thursday, we just review and just touch up and catch up and see if there's any Q&A that they have.
And the whole team is participating in these meetings twice a week, right? Wow, I do my sprints, and they're 2-week sprints, so I don't, bug my team too much because I try and do a hands-off approach. And I do have to jump in and micromanage things sometimes. Not a big fan of that, but we run sprints once in 2 weeks. We have a sprint, and then a sprint meeting, and then we have a sprint retrospect where, let's say, Monday is a sprint, then the whole week, then the next week and Friday next week, sprint retrospect, where we are looking at what we've accomplished, where were the roadblocks, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe I should be running it more often. I went from 3 weeks to 2 weeks because 3 weeks was too much of a span in this fast-moving industry, but I feel like 2 weeks was better. Maybe I am too hands-off. Maybe I should take your approach and start doing that.
Depends on your system. So we have something called the perfect listing framework, and it's a week-to-week reiteration. So not a lot of people are doing it. So like every single week we're looking at listings that are underperforming or not performing as well using, I don't know if you use it, we use RankBreeze, and RankBreeze allows you to see where they rank on Airbnb. So we want to make sure we're on page 1. So first then on the Monday, their Sunday, they'll basically go through all the data, pick out all the listings that are not on page 1, or at least not performing as we want them to be. And then we want to talk about them. It's like, what is wrong with them? Is it a click-through rate issue? Is it an open issue? Is it a conversion issue? And then once we know what they are, then we know what to deploy. And then we deploy that one move. For example, if it's a click-through issue, that means no one's clicking into the listing. So no one's seeing furthermore of like pricing or your other gallery that you have. So we want to change the cover photo, or we want to change something to, trigger people to click the listing. Right.
That's actually a great tip for a lot of hosts that are watching this that could actually use that. And what is it called again?
RankBreeze.
Beautiful, and gives you all the data and stuff, right? Yeah, that's very cool thing.
So our team basically takes the data from there, looking at open rates, click-through rates, conversion rates, and then we put it in Excel, and then we're tracking it week to week. And then every single week we're looking at like, okay, this one is in the red. All right, we changed the cover photo here. Let's see how it performed next week.
I love that you're so detail-oriented and numbers-oriented, because you're not just saying, hey, let's see what sticks to the wall, right? Like you actually look at stuff. That's amazing. That's why he's one of the top co-hosts in this province, right? And that's amazing. What about building your team up, right? Like getting people and growing them to become experts in what they do. Not everybody comes with amazing experience, right? They come with some experience. You grow them in their respective positions, and then they really start adding value to your company. How do you motivate people, and how do you grow that?
It's kind of like a bit of what I spoke about earlier, building that relationship with my team, and also like giving them the autonomy to do what's right. I do a lot of training and SOPs. It's like standard operating procedure. I will record them. There's like a huge like Rolodex of videos of me kind of directing them how to take care of certain things. I think one thing that really
that's very methodical, which is fantastic.
I think you can try this too. Something that really helped was was a huge unlock was a decision tree. So for example, someone got stuck outside, or the keypad didn't work. Rather than ask you, hey, how do we get them in there? What do I do now? Is to have a decision tree. Okay, step one is, okay, go remote unlock. Is it working? Is it not working? Okay, what about the lockbox, the backup lockbox? How about we send them there? Does it open? Can you get the keys from there? Okay, both failed. Okay, now what? Okay, maybe call a cleaner. Get them to come and help them open the door. So there's different things that they can go through on their own without calling us to get, support, because, our role is to, find new clients, build rapport, and do what we're doing today. And we always have the operators taking care of that. And they don't know everything, and definitely the new staff don't know anything at all. And they can always go back to the playbook and then look at all the SOPs to determine how to make decisions themselves, and also like how to take care of the problem.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. No, that's fantastic. I love it. And it makes me think about software that you guys probably use. You can't do everything manually, right?
A lot of software.
There's lots of software that can automate things. I know we use a bunch of things, and maybe a few tips that you can give, or a few softwares that actually help you for our audience, again, that you find extremely useful and make your life much easier, take away
automated.
I
love to learn about what you're using too. So we use uplisting for our property management system, which basically automates all the messages, all the reviews and all that stuff like that. And then we use, in terms of managing teams and the operations, we have Monday and Slack. So that Monday is for task management. Slack is more for communication. We have RankBreeze, Price Labs.
What else? Price Labs are for pricing. We use them as well. We actually have an in-house wonderful lady who does our revenue management now. She does use Price Labs as a base, but then she custom adjusts things, which is very important, because I tried doing it myself, but I realized that I am not able, because when it comes to different tasks, sometimes you can multitask depending on the task, and I'm very good at that, like replying to a message or something or this and that. But when you have to look at the pricing, you really have to zone in, and you really cannot be distracted with anything else, otherwise something's going to go wrong. So I realized I'm working with bringing on new clients, developing different areas of the business, and I just cannot dedicate my time to that in a way that these properties deserve. So we've hired a wonderful lady. She's doing a fantastic job, and we're seeing results in an amazing fashion already, right? But Price Labs is a good base to start. For the property management software, you mentioned you're using Uplisting. We're using Hospitable. I find that they're all very similar, right?
Depends on your needs.
But I feel like they do pretty much the same thing. There's few top ones like Guesty. And
Guesty is so expensive.
And Hostaway.
For years.
They are fantastic. They're better than whatever we're using, but they're also like 3 times or 4 times more expensive. And is it really worth it at this level, right? I wouldn't even use 90% of those features anyways, right? Most likely right now, because they're just very specific.
I like Guesty, to be honest. They have a lot of features that most PMSs don't have.
Yes, and that's why we have more expensive. But would you be using it if we had, like 100 properties? Maybe then yes, but then it's maybe worth it, right?
I think if we're in the U.S., it would make sense. I think the U.S. dollars and how Guesty charges in U.S. dollars, it is a moving rate that can get very expensive.
So, like a tip on what you would advise hosts that are not, they're not doing this professionally, but they're just doing it for themselves. One thing that a software that they can get that can make a big difference in their performance.
I'll say Price Labs.
Yeah, I probably agree, because pricing is huge, right? Because you're missing out potentially on hot dates that you didn't think of, right? I mean, everybody knows Taylor Swift came to town, so that's no brainer. But there's conferences and there's some other concerts, small concerts you might be missing out. Maybe your price is too high during the low season, and then you're not being booked. So. Price. Okay, that's a great tip. I think we've covered so much today. Well, there's one more thing on our agenda, a very exciting announcement that Edwin and I, we're actually going to host this podcast together in the future, or co-host, nice play on words, because I found, we had this chat, and I found that it would be amazing dynamic between two of us having different personalities and knowing a lot of people in the industry, bringing experts that we can interview together, and would make it way more fun for you guys to watch. So that's an exciting announcement. I'm very happy you'll be doing this with me now.
Excited to be part of this.
Yeah, man, and thank you for coming today.
Absolutely.
This was really, really good. I love it. I hope everybody really enjoyed this and learned some really good things. I personally have. I'm watching this, rewatching this, and making notes and implementing them. So every time we have a chat, I learn so much. Yeah, exactly. And that's why we're going to do more of this, and everybody's going to learn and just get better.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, buddy.
No, thank you, Antoine.
Awesome. Thank you.